solutions you can buy there. The stuff that we do that's proprietary though and in-house is more around creating those deeper profiles of like how a user logs in, how they press keys, what they do once they log in, things like that. That's all proprietary. We protect all of that stuff. We don't have a plan on open sourcing a lot of that. But yeah, so it's a combination of the two.
Excellent, thank you.
Oh, sure.
Is there a plan for on-disk encryption for free accounts?
So encryption is interesting. So we encrypt everything you store with us. When you save a file to Dropbox, we encrypt it on our end. We encrypt it in transit. We encrypt it at rest on our hardware. We've been asked by a lot of our customers to introduce on-disk encryption as well. But I'm not. This laptop, the laptops we deploy at Dropbox, all have encrypted hard drives. Encryption is something you want to do across your device, not just within Dropbox itself. So I don't know if we'll ever encrypt that data on your hard drive specifically. We would probably look to you to bring your own encryption locally. One thing we may do though is, one thing we're looking at is introducing rights management. That I think is an area that's a little bit more interesting for us and where we feel like we can add a lot of value. So if you have a file that's in Dropbox, being able to apply rights to it, even if you move that file outside of Dropbox, right? So preventing data leakage, things like that. So that's where we focus our efforts on right now. That's a good question, though.
So I have a follow-up question to that. What kind of encryption and authentication schemes do you use to protect the in-transit data?
So in-transit is TLS. I forget exactly, it's whatever the latest version is. It's TLS in transit, and then on disk it's AES 256-bit. But we do something interesting with your files when you save them with us. So this presentation, I think, was about 25 megs. We will take a file, so when you save a file to Dropbox, we take that file and we chunk it up into 4 meg blocks. We take those blocks and we confetti them across our storage services. And then we replicate them across our distributed systems, right? And then we take all the information about that file, how you piece it back together, what the name of that file is, all the metadata around that, and we put it on a separate set of services. Our block storage services and our metadata services never talk to each other. So what I presented before was an oversimplification of our production environment. If you actually get a position on our production environment on our block services, you would have access to an ocean of encrypted blocks. And there's not much you can do with that. If you get access to our metadata services, you would have access to information about your data, but you wouldn't actually have access to the data itself, because all that's over on the block services. If you were to get access to both of those, you would then need to get access to our code base so that you could reverse engineer our logic and then use the metadata tables to go back and grab those blocks and piece them together. So it's not just about encryption, it's also about how we're storing it and protecting it. Cool.
So I'll ask another question. So previously, our first speaker from Security First, he talked about the notion of data sovereignty, the idea of data not leaving the country or the governing region where it resides. Dropbox has been used, of course, internationally by millions of users. Does Dropbox have any mechanisms for enforcing data sovereignty?
Sure. So we brought online European data services earlier this year. That being said, we did that to help some of our customers use Dropbox because they had to have data sovereignty in Europe. But the truth is, Europe is just as bad and in some cases worse than the US when it comes to national surveillance. Data sovereignty actually is, where your data lives is not the issue. It's what we need to do is we need to establish a framework that protects the privacy of your data regardless of where it resides. We have most of our data stored in the US today, and you could argue that the US government has overreaching capabilities to go and get that data. But moving it to Europe, moving it to Asia for sure, moving it anywhere else in the world doesn't really solve that problem. There will always be a jurisdiction that can come and try and get your data from you. And yeah, so we do have data stored in Europe now. I think it brings comfort to some of our customers. We only move the data there if our customers ask us to move it there. We will over time probably open up more regional data centers for those reasons, but I actually don't think it gives the protections that our customers are looking for.
Just a little follow-up. You say that you encrypt everything, and anytime you encrypt, of course, you're generating keys. Are you maintaining control of those keys, or do you give control to the users themselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I can tell you, come from a company and not from a university. That's a question that many of our business customers ask us, right? So today we maintain the keys, and we do that for a couple of reasons. The collaboration features that we deliver around Dropbox, things like previews, comments, require us to have the keys to the data so that we can write back to that data. All of that's done programmatically, though, and so what we do is to make sure that that trust isn't abused. You've trusted us to store your data with the keys that we own. We have both very, very strong policies as well as technical controls as to how your data could be accessed, right? A Dropbox employee cannot just decide today to go and fire up their laptop and get access to employee data. There's a number of controls in place there. And at the same time, we are looking at how we can bring keys to our customers without breaking those collaborative features, right? That's our big challenge there. I think that today you could encrypt your data. If you have something highly sensitive and you want to encrypt it before you send it to us, we don't care. Like, we'll take whatever file, every file type, encrypted, non-encrypted, we'll store it. But we won't be able to give you previews. So if you're trying to look at it on your phone, you won't be able to see what that looks like, right? And so it's a trade-off that some of our customers have chosen, or what they'll do is they'll classify their data, and they'll have certain data classifications that have to be encrypted before it gets to us, and they know that they're just using us for dump storage at that point. As far as storage goes, there are much cheaper options than Dropbox. People are really coming to us for that extra layer of collaboration. So to answer your question, today we own the keys. Will that be true forever? I would say probably not. We just want to find a way to do it that delivers a good experience to our end users.
So this may not be a technical question, so you have to answer it, if you don't feel comfortable. But recently there was an incident where many passwords in Dropbox were breached. So you laid out a very, comprehensive process. So, and I'm asking it, just out of curiosity, so where did something go wrong, or was it something that had nothing to do with Dropbox? And once again, you don't have to answer it if you don't.
No. I actually like answering this question. So there was a data breach. There was a data dump of Dropbox credentials a few months ago, and that database came from a 2012 breach that occurred at Dropbox, so a few years ago. There had been a number of data dumps that had all occurred in 2012. There were a number of breaches that occurred in 2012, and we've seen this year a number of dumps from those breaches, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, the amount of time that those accounts have been, the amount of time that the account information has been out there has been so long that they're not really that valuable anymore. The reason I talked about the cyber criminals who go and try and hack services, this was done by an organization that wanted to sell these credentials. And the reason they couldn't sell them is because we had encrypted passwords back then. At the time we were using SHA-1, and we had started to transition to bcrypt. And so if you look at the table, you'll see, I think something like 30% of the passwords are encrypted with SHA-1, and I think the remaining 70% are using bcrypt with a salt. The truth is, the cloud industry has grown up a lot. We suffered a breach at the same time. LinkedIn suffered a breach at the same time. MySpace suffered a breach. There's just massive numbers of breaches that were going on. And we've all learned a lot of lessons, and today we are much more, and I can give you actually some more background on this. I don't know if I should be, but I will. The way that occurred was LinkedIn got popped. LinkedIn's database got popped, and one of our employees had been reusing usernames and passwords on LinkedIn and their corporate Dropbox account. That user also had done something that they shouldn't have done. They had been running analytics on one of our restricted tables, and they had created a view that had the user table in it. It had usernames, and it had those encrypted passwords in it. The employee couldn't do much with that data. They never should have done that because there's nothing you can do with encrypted passwords, but they made a mistake, right? And so the attackers took the LinkedIn credentials, got a position on our corporate network, and then went through that user's access and was able to pull out this table from our analytics. And so what we've done since then is we now mandated two-factor authentication across all our services. We've further restricted who has access to these tables. So a very, very small number of employees have access to even things like the user table itself, even though there's no file information in there, no data in there that the users have stored with us. We're going to restrict access to it. And then finally, we've rolled out 1Password to all of our employees. And what we do is on our laptops, we have a little agent that runs. And if we see you typing in the same password into another website that you also use for Dropbox or Google Apps, we use Gmail for email, we will reset the passwords on both those accounts. So we actually monitor now to make sure that the same passwords aren't being used. And we don't actually know what the password is, we hash what they've typed in and see if the hash matches.
So all the attackers were able to get a password down. You're saying the dump wasn't really useful to them because all the information, the data was encrypted and they didn't have access to decrypt.
That's right.
I see.
That's right.
That sounds really cool. When can I have it?
Which piece of it?
Where it rewrites it resets your password if you do duplicate.
Yeah, I can find out. Give me your email address, and I'll check with our corporate engineering team. I don't think we wrote it ourselves. I think it's something that has been open source, so I think you should be able to grab it.
And has that been done through keylogging or some other mechanism?
We'll just so it actually is it's browser based, and so as you're submitting the form with your password in it, we'll capture the hash of that password, and because it's encrypted in the form, we can't see what it is, but we can get the hash out of it. So
Right, and then you can check.
and then we can check it. Yep. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? No? All right, I'll be around after this. If you think of any questions, feel free to stop by. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.